Hello again. Welcome into Strategies for Living. Welcome into 1017 FM and 710 Keel. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Look at you down there grinning like a Chessy cat.
I know.
PLPC Carla McCormick, how you doing?
Hi, Dave. I'm doing good.
And our producer, he is the ace of the airwaves, Rapid Ruben Wright. I didn't hear you on traffic this morning. Did I hear you doing? Are you doing news?
I was on the news today. I'm filling in for Matt on the Robert and Erin show, and one of those responsibilities is doing the news.
Wow, wow! I'm so proud. I'm so proud of you.
He's been working since 3 a.m.
3 a.m.
Yeah,
You got here at 3 a.m.
Yes, I did.
Do you ever sleep? Are you a vampire? Is there something we need to know?
I'm starting to feel like that.
Yeah, well, it seems like, one of the things that Ruben and Carla that has, I don't know, somewhat surprised me since we've gone back to doing this program daily is, we've kind of let the subject matter that we present flow. We go with what seems appropriate. Do you realize how much we've talked about addiction? Are you conscious of that, or Carla or Ruben?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an important subject.
It is, and what I've been especially looking forward to the information we're going to get tonight, because what is one of the most addictive substances in the United States?
It's got to be heroin, meth, amphetamines.
Meth.
More than heroin.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're going to
I
talk.
would guess so, yeah.
We're going to talk to Dr. Nicholas Getters from LSU Health Shreveport this evening. We're going to talk about the meth problem. We're going to talk about his loving solution to the health problem and much more. So lots of information this evening.
Cool.
Yeah, folks, thank you for tuning into Strategies for Living. We are presented by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana. Been helping individuals and families now for 60 years. Also brought to you by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Resilient House. Be right back to introduce Dr. Nick Getters, our life strategist this evening.
Sometimes I feel a little mad. But don't you know that no one alive can...
If we're talking addiction prevention, education, and treatment in Shreveport-Bossier for 60 years, we're talking about CADA. Let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about treatment. Let's talk about getting your life back. The Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, CADA, has Welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Let's welcome to the program now the head of the Department of Pharmacology, Toxicology, and Neuroscience at LSU Health Shreveport. He is Dr. Nick Getters. He's also the scientific developer, co-founder of Embera Neurotherapeutics. That's the developer of a new drug, EMB-001. We're going to hear more about that this evening. Dr. Nicholas Getters is also the founder, director, president of the board of Loving Solutions, giving women healing from meth addiction, a place to live, and become normal again, and come back into the community through the grace and love of Jesus the Christ. We are so happy to welcome you back, Dr. Getters, to Strategies for Living.
Great. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm really happy to be here.
We've got a lot to talk about. We always have a lot to talk about with you. EMB-001 sounds important.
Right. Well, that's a compound that I developed in my years of research at LSU Health. And we've been studying addiction, or I've been studying it in the laboratory for 35 years. This is a potential treatment that we developed in the lab. We've patented it through LSU, and it's now licensed to Embera Neurotherapeutics, and they're working on taking this drug into clinical trials.
So what will it do? What is the quote unquote magic of this drug?
Let me try to break it down for you. So somebody uses a drug, whether it's smoking cigarettes, alcohol, cocaine, meth, what have you.
Right.
And when they're using the drug, they're using it with certain people. They're using it in certain situations.
Right.
And the effects of the drug become conditioned to those places where the people are.
Right.
Then the person stops using the drug. They go into rehab. They go to jail. They go to prison. And they're separated from the drug, and they don't really crave it very much while they're separated from the drug.
Right.
But then they get out, and they get into that same environment where they use the drug, or where they used to live, or maybe stress triggers them.
Going back.
But these things trigger them. It leads to craving, and the next thing you know,
they're
smoking again. They're drinking again, whatever it might be. The compound we've developed blocks the ability of those triggers in the environment to activate this system in the brain that then leads to craving and then results in relapse. And it does this through a unique mechanism. It doesn't affect the pleasure chemicals in the brain. It doesn't affect dopamine. It affects the ability of those triggers to generate craving that leads to relapse.
Wow.
It's like Pavlov's dog. You know about that. It's this conditioned response that we're able to block with this compound.
Wow. Okay, so this it's known as EMB-001.
That's right, because it's our first compound, and so that's how it got that number.
It's currently in the first phase.
They've completed the phase 1 trials.
This is clinical trials.
Yes, sir. The phase 1 had been completed. The FDA's approved that and approved Embera to move on to phase 2 clinical trials.
Now, what happens in phase 2?
In phase 2, they do a larger sample of people. So there are going to be laboratories all over the country where people are going to come in who are struggling with cocaine, is what we're going to look at first. And they're going to do these trials comparing EMB-001 to placebo to see whether or not they can reduce cocaine use and craving in these people.
Now, this phase of the clinical trials, do we know about how long it generally will last, or is that kind of depending on the drug?
Well, no, it's going to depend on how many people they can test with the drug. But the company has arranged for multiple sites across the country. So what we hope is that these sites can enroll enough people quickly enough where in a couple of years they're going to get the results and then be able to move on to larger clinical trials, which are called phase 3.
Now, the first phase has shown very, very promising results.
The phase 1 is more of a safety phase to show that it's not going to hurt anyone. However, at LSU Health in the Department of Psychiatry, we ran a pilot clinical trial that wasn't even powered to show statistical significance. But what we showed, and it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical
Now,
trial.
for our listeners, what does that mean, double blind?
That means neither the doctor nor the patient knew whether or not they were getting the drug or placebo.
Right, right.
And so they did this clinical trial, and and it wasn't powered, meaning they didn't statistically think there were enough people enrolled into the study to show significance. But at the end of the study, they showed a statistically significant reduction not only in cocaine craving, but in urinalysis for the cocaine metabolites. There was a decrease in cocaine metabolites in 80% of the people who were in the trial. So they were not only telling us they were craving less, but they were using less cocaine.
Wow. Wow.
So, Dr. Katz, how is your drug, different than drugs like naltrexone or those kinds of drugs that are?
Well, naltrexone is an antagonist, meaning it would block the effects of an opiate drug. Nicotine gum is like a replacement therapy. Ours is not drug specific. It's specific for these triggers that can stimulate craving that leads
So it's
to
going to
relapse.
work for cocaine. It's going to work for alcohol. It's going to work for nicotine.
And since it works on the stress systems in the brain, it may work for things like gambling and other types of addiction
food.
Yes, that involve the stress system. We actually have measured in our animal studies that we are reducing what are called neurosteroids, that are one of the messengers in the brain that mediate the stress response. And we're able to increase these neurosteroids that dampen the stress response. We've shown that. Wow. And in the same areas of the brain that have been shown in PET scans to light up when people are exposed to cocaine cues.
Wow. Now, the next phase then beyond this would be if it shows the promise that it's shown so far, then it goes into a third phase of clinical trials. What happens then?
And that's where they expand to a much larger treatment base of individuals to show a greater cross-section of people, to show that it's effective across a greater range of individuals. Now, I did want to tell you that they're also, in addition to this phase 2 study for cocaine that is about to be initiated very, very soon, they're working with people at Yale University, and they've developed a smoking model in the laboratory, a smoking craving model. And we're about to test EMB-001 in this craving model for smoking. And you can just imagine the market for cigarette smoking.
Oh, my goodness.
Cocaine and meth and the opioid crisis, these are all very real problems. But when you think about the market for cigarettes, once we show effectiveness in those studies,
it's massive.
It is.
It's massive.
Yes.
Do you, if we had been a fly on the wall, the day that you realized do you remember the day that you realized what you had? What did you really realized what this potential of EMB-001 is? Do you remember that day?
Yes.
What would we have seen?
I really was kind of in a state of unbelief, because my goal has always been that what I do hopefully would be able to help someone someday, but I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. But people came into my life that helped me get from point A to point B to where we could get into drug development. We could get the backing that we needed financially to get these studies done, to get the phase 1 studies completed, and then to move on to phase 2 as we're doing now. I think it would have been a look of disbelief that, wow, what I've hoped to do all my life is finally going to actually start happening.
Do you believe in miracles?
Oh, I don't know if I would call it miracle. I think God's had his hand in my life since the day I was born, and he's directed me all the way to get to this point.
Ain't that a miracle?
Well, yes, it is.
Yeah. What would Father Horseman say?
Fool.
I love it. I love it. So, realistically, Dr. Nick, could we see this drug on the market within 5 years?
I think we could see some promise that it could be getting close. What's going to happen, obviously, is that we're not going to be able to raise the money ourselves
Right.
to go into these larger clinical trials. But once we show effectiveness in cocaine, in this smoking study, possibly even methamphetamine, there's some things going on there. Once we show effectiveness, I have every belief that some larger pharmaceutical company is going to see the value.
Absolutely.
It's going to come in. They're going to have the money to run these large trials and really accelerate the program.
Fantastic. And I can't wait. Can't wait to see what's next. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the problem, a big problem. We talked about it at the beginning of the program, methamphetamines, one of the most addictive substances, certainly in the United States, maybe on the planet, right?
That's right.
We'll talk about that and a loving solution to it when we come back with Dr. Nicholas Getters today on Strategies.
Must agree if you thought it out.
And welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan with the head of the Department of Pharmacology, Toxicology, Neuroscience at LSU Health Shreveport, Dr. Nicholas Getters, and the founder of Loving Solutions. We're going to talk about that, but we can't talk about that without talking about meth addiction. Dr. Nick, it's hard to hear what we were talking about, one of the most addictive substances in the United States. You were saying during the break, maybe in the world?
I think so. I think it is. We've heard a lot about the opioid crisis, and it's a big problem. It's huge. There
Right.
are people dying every day overdosing on fentanyl, and that's a huge, huge problem that we could talk about another day. But methamphetamine is also a huge problem. It's everywhere. There are you hear about in some states that they have more people that are dying from methamphetamine related illnesses than from opioids. I know in San Diego County, the medical examiner there has been looking at deaths associated from different factors, whether that be opioids or from methamphetamine or other causes. And he says that methamphetamine is the greatest cause of death in San Diego County.
Wow.
And
Is it the feeling of euphoria, the alertness that has this? You would feel the first use that makes it so addictive.
it's all those things. It makes you feel on top of the world. It makes you feel like you can do anything. It helps you lose weight. It helps you stay awake. It helps you work. It helps you focus. You can almost think of it as Ritalin on steroids to some degree, because people start using it because it helps them stay awake. It helps them focus. It helps them lose weight. They can get a lot of work done. But then what happens is over time, their body needs more and it needs more. They grow with what's called tolerance to the effects of the drug. And so a gram doesn't do it anymore. So they take 2 grams and they're taking 4 and 8 and 10 or
it
whatever.
doesn't take long.
I'm over exaggerating there, but you get the idea.
And you were mentioning dopamine a few minutes ago. Meth releases what, 2-3 times more dopamine than cocaine does?
That's right. There are studies out there that show methamphetamine releases 4 times more dopamine than cocaine does. It releases about 8 to 10 times more than sex or food.
Whoa.
So you think that you have a drug that produces a greater pleasurable effect than sex or food or anything else you might want, and the person gets to the point where all they want is more meth. And then because their body has built this tolerance to it, they have to take more meth to get that effect, and they're chasing it, and they're chasing that high for the rest of their lives.
Now, it's widely available because the drug is produced both legally and illegally. Is that right?
Well, it's widely available because it's easy to make. And they figured this out in the early 2000s that they could take a 2-liter Coke bottle and put some Sudafed in there and mix it up with some other chemicals, and in a 3 hours have their own methamphetamine that they can cook themselves. The reason it's a huge problem now is because of supply and demand. As more and more states started to legalize marijuana, and I'm not talking against that, but as more and more states legalized marijuana, the Mexican drug cartels realized they weren't going to make the money from shipping marijuana across the border anymore. So they shifted to fentanyl and methamphetamine. They have super labs, or what they called in Mexico now, that can make tons of methamphetamine, and I'm not exaggerating this time. They've discovered labs recently that can make tons of methamphetamine. They're using a very refined method called the P2P method that I'm not going to get into detail about that, but it makes very, very pure methamphetamine. They get the ingredients to make the methamphetamine from China and India. They're very cheap for the drug cartels to get.
Right.
They make this methamphetamine that's almost 99% pure, and sheriff's departments across this country will tell you that they're seeing methamphetamine that's at least 90% pure, and the price has just, the bottom has dropped out of it because the market's been flooded. So it's cheap to buy, it's easy to find, and it's very, very potent.
What would we see? What do we need to be aware of? What would we see if someone has an addiction to meth?
It's just what you would imagine. Their behavior changes. They start being suspicious of you. They start hiding you. There's time that you don't know where they are. You don't know what they're doing. Their personality changes. You can tell. And lots of times people will try not to see that someone is changing. They'll try to put on blinders and they'll say, well,
Right.
well, Mary isn't doing that. That can't be that. It's got to
Can't
be
be.
something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. So, how big is the issue of meth in the Shreveport-Bossier area? How big a problem do we have?
It's a huge problem. I have talked with Judge David Matlock. He runs the juvenile and the drug court here.
Yes.
And he's told me, a private conversation, he said probably at least 2/3 of the women coming through his court where there's some problem with keeping their children, at least 2/3 of them are using methamphetamine. And it doesn't mean there aren't other things going on, but there's a huge problem with methamphetamine in this area.
What about the division of, do more men get addicted? Do more women get addicted? Do we know those statistics?
That's an interesting question. With most drugs, typically, and I hate to generalize, but typically men are maybe 2 times more likely to use drugs than women are.
right.
With methamphetamine, it's equal. Women are just as likely, if not more likely, to use methamphetamine. Part of the reason may be because they can lose weight. If they have a family, they can take care of their kids. They can be super mom. They can get up and go to work the next morning and lose weight. So they start taking the drug for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
But then what happens is over time, the drug starts to take over control of their lives. They're no longer watching their children anymore. They're no longer watching their parents anymore. They're completely consumed with using the drug and with how the drug makes them feel.
The primary relationship in their life becomes, how am I going to get my next fix of meth?
Right, exactly.
So what form is the meth on the streets in?
Well, it's in a crystal form.
So it
It's
has to be
easily
smoked?
no. It can be injected. It dissolves in water. It's easy to dissolve it. It can be smoked. It can be snorted, or it can be injected. With a lot of drugs, you get the same sort of high from smoking as you do from injecting it. There's something interesting about the chemical makeup of methamphetamine. You get a much more intense high from injecting methamphetamine than you do from smoking it. And the people using methamphetamine know that. And I've had people tell me they wouldn't go to the hospital for some very severe reactions to the drug because they didn't want the people in the hospital to see the track marks, because then they would know they were injecting the drug, they were shooting meth, and they would think less of them because of that.
How is it possible? You know, we talk some about the difference between substance abuse and substance addiction, and from a brain point of view, is that possible with meth? Can someone just abuse it and walk away from it, or does almost everyone who is a chronic user become addicted?
I've had people tell me they could just walk away from it, but most people say no. That's a lie. It's very hard to stop.
There's very few recreational meth users.
I would say yes. There would probably be people calling up saying, no, that's not true. But no, it's hard to use meth recreationally, even compared to cocaine.
Wow. So, Loving Solutions. How did this all get started, Dr. Nick?
Well, because I at one point was writing a little column in the Inquisitor magazine called Meth in the News. And I would look what was going on around the country and write a weekly column. And I started getting letters from people, especially people in prison or people who were just released from prison or just had finished with treatment. And they said, Doc, what do I do when I get out of here? Where do I go? How am I going to learn, what I'm supposed to do? I can't go home. They don't want me at home anymore. And
the addiction has totally messed that up.
They burnt all those bridges. And I thought, well, somebody really ought to do something. And, it's like one of those things that God started tapping me on the shoulder and said, well, what's wrong with you? and I told God, well, what do you mean me? I'm a scientist. I'm an educator, entrepreneur. I don't know anything about doing this. Why me? And it was like, well, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? So my wife and I prayed about it and decided we just would take a leap of faith and do this.
And what a leap you took.
We've we're purchasing a 4,000 square foot house, 5 bedrooms, 7 baths on 12.5 acres in North Street, North Caddo Parish. Not knowing really what we're doing, but knowing that we have to do this.
Yeah, and that's Loving Solutions.
That's it.
And now there have been some people that have come through so far. Is that right?
We had one lady that came through. You know, sometimes your heart gets ahead of yourself, and we only had one house mother, which was a crazy thing to try to open it with just one house mother, and Linda and I were doing just about everything else just ourselves.
Linda's your wife.
She's my wife, and we also were trying to fund it mostly ourselves. There were people that were helping us, but a huge portion was coming just from us, and that wasn't going to work.
Right.
And you know, sometimes God has to break you down to then build you back up and
Right.
fix you back the way you're supposed to be. Well,
Right.
that's what I went through the end of this summer. I was broken. And that was God telling me, you need to listen to me. You need to do this the right way. You need to not just follow your heart and jump in before you're ready. So now I'm working with our board of directors, and we're going to do this the right way. We've still got the house. We're still maintaining it. I'll be out there Sunday cutting the grass if anyone wants to come help me. But
Carlo will be there.
But yeah,
I like to cut grass.
we're moving forward, and this is going to happen the right way, and we're going to do this soon.
So what are the things that are needed? What's the most needed thing for our listeners to be aware of right now in terms of how talk about a place to put your time, your talents, your resources, whatever they may be.
Right. If you go out and look, there are very few homes for women, and very, very few that focus on the methamphetamine problem.
Right.
That's our biggest need in this area.
And that will be the exclusive for Loving Solutions.
I mean, if someone is using meth and also using cocaine or also drinking or something, we're not going to exclude them, but,
Right.
but meth is our primary,
Right.
the primary drug. And and so what we need primarily right now is a stable funding source. Donations, we love them, we need them. We need
Right.
$100 here, $100 there, but basically it costs $1,000 for each person that we have going through the house
that's
a month.
A month. That's the cost of maintaining.
So we're looking at $8 to $10 grand a month.
Right.
And so we need to identify that source of income for
All
us.
right. And so again, if we probably have listeners that have ideas. Loving Solution needs ideas right now.
Oh, I'd
don't
love
they?
ideas. I certainly can't do this myself. I've learned that.
What would be the point of contact? Facebook page?
I've got a Facebook page, and we also have a website, lovingsolutions.org. Either way, you can find out how to get a hold of me, but you can find me on Facebook, and the Loving Solutions has a Facebook page as well.
All right, we'll come back. We'll talk more. Dr. Nicholas Getters from LSU Health Shreveport, our life strategist. We're learning so much in such a little. That's what I love about
so
this
many
program.
questions.
Oh, yeah, well, get them ready. Get them ready. We'll be back. More strategies for living to come.
How can you tell me how much you miss me?
Welcome back. Welcome back into 101.7 FM and 710 KEEL. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. PLPC Carla McCormick and marriage and family therapist David McMillan. Dr. Nicholas Getters with us this evening, the head of the Department of Pharmacology, Toxicology, Neuroscience at LSU Health Shreveport, and also the founder, director, president of the board of Loving Solutions, lovingsolutions.org. The mission to provide a safe, loving environment where women who are healing from the effects of crystal meth in the Shreveport area can learn the life skills that they need to lead happy, healthy, productive lives and the love of Jesus.
And that's exactly right, David. And I know we still say the Shreveport area, and we're not excluding anyone from the Shreveport area, but we're going to take anybody from across the state. They don't have
Fantastic.
to be just right here. It can be, coming out of prison in East Louisiana. It can be coming out of Rapides Parish, what have you. We're going to help anybody we can.
Beautiful 12-acre location, 4,000 square foot home.
Yes.
5 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms. You're going to need
right.
7 bathrooms for, to
That's
house a
right.
few ladies,
right.
No
waiting.
And that's going to come. That
Yes,
is
it
going to
is,
come.
yes.
No doubt about that. I heard a rumor that one Erin McCarty was on the board.
She is
of,
indeed. She's very helpful.
Yeah. So you and your wife, Dr. James Patterson's on the board.
He is.
Kit Gamble's on the board.
Yes, he was here last night.
He was here last night. Monique Cunningham, and I don't want to leave anybody out. Kathy McHugh, Mary Smith, Sonny Huckabee's on the board. Who am I leaving out? Patricia Williams, of course, you and your wife. So you need ideas. You need a funding source. Again, this is an idea. This started again. You heard the voice. It was loud and clear to you, right?
That's right. I recognized there was a need, and there was no way that I could not do this. It just was something I had to do, and there's nothing that I've been more passionate about doing in my life than this. For that short period of time when it was so hard, when my wife and I were stretched to the breaking point.
Yes.
At the same point, knowing that we were possibly helping someone, that was the most satisfying, gratifying feeling. And I know we're going to have that again when we have that house full of ladies and they're learning that Jesus loves them, that he forgives them, that anything they've done before, he'll forgive them if they just come to him.
Absolutely.
And once they learn that, they'll learn how to live without the drug. They'll learn that they don't need the drug anymore.
Why is the house again? Now let's distinguish. This is not treatment. They're coming
It's not
out of
treatment. Not
they're
at all.
coming out of treatment.
That's right. Yes.
And they're coming to the house. Explain, Dr. Nick, why that's so important in this particular case, because I think that's an important aspect.
Well, sure. Think about somebody who maybe has a family and gets addicted to methamphetamine. They start stealing from their family. They start neglecting their family. They start doing things that hurts their family. And they go into treatment or they go into jail. You think the family wants them back?
No.
They've burnt those bridges, and they need somewhere where they can start over again. And also somewhere where they know they can be forgiven for what they've done. God forgives them all their sins if they come to him and believe.
That is, we talk a lot on this program. We were talking a few minutes ago of kind of the surprises as we've unfolded daily. And again, I'm not going to speak for Carla, but I think we've agreed on this. How many times we've talked about shame in the course of our months together here?
Almost every show, and how often have we talked about the fact that we are not our mistakes?
Right.
Those are things that we did, but that's not who we are, and that's what you're talking about. And what I hear you saying is you're talking about giving these women hope.
Absolutely.
Because without hope, there's no reason to stay sober. They have to find a reason to stay sober, to stay clean, more than they want to use, right?
Absolutely. And then forgiveness takes the shame, is the antidote for shame. And you can't you can't get back into life if you don't think you're okay. And that's what shame is. There's something bad about me. Not that I've done something, but I am.
I'm wrong.
I'm wrong.
broken.
I'm bad. I'm flawed.
Yeah.
And that's where the love of God and the love, especially the love of Christ.
Right.
comes
Think
in.
about when Jesus walked the earth. Did he go to the emperor's homes and to the Pharisees' homes? No, he went to the tax collectors.
Yeah.
He went to the prostitutes. He went to those who didn't have any hope, and he offered them hope. He said, "Follow me, and I'll give you that hope."
Yeah.
And he did. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to lead them to Jesus, and then he'll do the rest.
Yeah. Now, selfishly, we're going to have you around for a while now because you've signed a mortgage. You're going to be working at LSU for the next 100 years.
Till
right?
I'm 92. That's right.
I love it.
He's got a new drug that's going to blow the market off, blow the roof off the market. He'll be all right.
We're counting on that.
I trust God to take care of me, and so I have nothing to fear.
Where did you learn that, Dr. Nick? How did that come to be?
Just the Spirit talking in my heart and reading God's Word and trusting in Him. It's really easy when you just let Him, just let God.
And you have had some other blessings along the way. You've the day that you signed the mortgage.
Oh yes,
You've had some special blessings, haven't you?
I really did.
If that wasn't affirmation, I don't know
For
what
those
was.
that don't know, you want the story?
Yeah.
For those that don't know, I was adopted as a baby. And I was raised that my parents were alcoholic, but that has nothing to do with it. It just may have been part of God's plans for me. But they didn't want me to know who my birth mother was, so I never did. And I went through Catholic charities, and the Catholic nuns are not real. They weren't real keen on telling you who your mother was, so there wasn't any way for me to know.
In fact, they go
They lock it up.
The extra mile that
Yeah.
you don't know.
So my mother and my parents died, and someone who used to babysit me said, "Why don't you try to find out who your mother was?" And I said, there's no way. And to make a long story short, well, there was a way. And on the day, at the very minute that I was signing the mortgage, knowing that I was going to have to work until I was 92 years old, I received an email from one of my former students, and in that email had my mother's name, Dorothy Marie Beeson.
Wow.
Within the week, I met brothers and sisters that I didn't know I had.
Wow.
And so, yeah, talk about an affirmation. That was God saying, yes, you're doing the right thing, and blessed me with a family.
Talk about grace.
That just gave me goosebumps. That's so cool.
Pardon the pun, but that's amazing.
It happened. It's just
Yeah.
the way I described it. I had no idea that was going to happen. I had no clue. It's just we had a question about escrow and went and sat out in the ante room, and I looked at my email just to kill the time, and there it was. The moment I was signing those papers, here the email was with my mother's name.
Folks, if you want to help support, if you're looking for a place that is gonna make a difference, you got to check out Loving Solutions. I would invite you to continue the conversation that we are beginning, and we'll continue this conversation, Dr. Nick. We'll
Great.
have you back many times, but I want our listeners to go to lovingsolutions.org and look at the house, look at the land, check out the board of directors, look at what's needed, look into your own heart, and what are you ready to do? What are you ready to step up and do? Again, I think the story that Dr. Nick just told underscores who's involved in this, who's really involved in this. So lovingsolutions.org is the way to continue the conversation that you and I are starting today with Dr. Nicholas Getters.
When this life is over, I
I was standing by my window on a cold
I love it.
and cloud.
Reuben does it again.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Welcome back to Strategies for Living, 101.7 FM, 710 KEEL. Marriage and family therapist David McMillan, PLPC. Carla McCormick with Dr. Nicholas Getters from LSU Health Shreveport. So, turns out you're from Lafayette. Yeah.
From that area, that's right.
Yeah, so can I say Kunas on the radio?
You can.
Well, you
So
did
you're
now.
gonna? Yeah, I guess I did. Are you gonna give Dr. Getters some lessons?
I'm
on-
going to have to teach him how to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he
Now you
don't,
sound like
he,
my sister.
He don't know how to
You
talk
don't
at
know
all.
how to talk, huh, Shy?
No, Sha.
Well,
Bless his heart.
you got to learn some things, Nick. You got to learn some things.
We got to get him a good nickname too.
Oh, he's got to have it.
T-Nick.
T-Nick.
They call me BB,
BB.
Big Brother.
Oh,
Big
that
brother.
works.
I love it. I love it. So, again, we've got a couple minutes left, Dr. Nick. Your heart is as big as this. This is big building. All of these radio stations are in. Your heart's as big as this building, and you need some help. You need some help with
do
Loving
need
Solutions.
help. I realized, and God made it very clear to me, I can't do this myself. I can only do it with Him, and hopefully His Spirit will touch people out there who want to come and help make this happen.
Yeah.
It's not something I can do. I can only do it with God's help and with the help of the good people out there.
And I know that that's going to happen. So people can go to lovingsolutions.org or go to Loving Solutions on Facebook.
That's right.
Either one. And continue this conversation. Learn about women and meth. Learn how you can help. Learn about the house. Ideas needed, money needed. The funding source has to be there.
That's right. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer questions as well. I'll do it for free. You know, if you got questions about drugs, you have family members that are struggling, you know, contact me.
You can easily contact Dr. Nicholas Getters through lovingsolutions.org. Just hit the contact button
Or find me on Facebook.
Find you on Facebook,
That's right.
and it goes directly to you. You know, whenever you come, it's a packed hour.
It is.
And so I you've got you've got a wide open invitation anytime
Thank you.
to Strategies for Living, and I'll look forward to the next time that we get to visit and learn more about EMB 001. How'd I do?
That sounds great.
All right, you've done it again. Carla, you've done it again.
I love this night.
Reuben, you've done it again. Folks, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Strategies for Living. We've been brought to you by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana, and by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacobs Well, Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Resilient House. If today were the last day of your life, you only have one more phone call that you could make, who would you call? What would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For PLPC Carla McCormick, for Reuben Wright, for Dr. Nicholas Getters, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you next time on Strategies for Living.